Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. A very busy Tuesday coming up. So we're going to dig straight into today's Q&A. This is with Teja. Teja's question pertained to scoliosis. And so we covered some ground in this one in regards to what I think is the source of the deformity, if you will, in regards to scoliosis, and I think it's a very strong mechanical situation. There may be some other influences. I don't think there's any question that things tend to be multifactorial. There could be issues with cilial deformities. There might be cerebrospinal flow issues, but I think the strongest evidence points towards the internal force relationship with the external physical structure and then how we manage things. Reason being, if we go back into, I believe it's an article in Spine Journal in 2007, where they were looking at normal spines, so-called normal spines, people with normal internal anatomy compared to citizen versus, and what we saw was opposing mirror image curves of the normal spines. If you look at a scoliotic spine, you're going to see the structure of the anterior aspect of the spine is the area where we're going to see the lengthening of the connective tissues, where we're going to see the compressive strategy on the opposing side. So internal organs are attached to the anterior aspect of the abdomen and to the spine. Therefore, we should expect to see the elongation as described in the research. There was a more recent study by Schlosser, where they specifically mentioned this concept of the influence of the internal organs. They found issues similar to the spinal curvatures in the 2007 study. So again, I think everything's pointing towards this mechanical representation as the source of the scoliosis. We also touched base on a little bit of what we would consider hypermobility and why it may exist. So this is a really, really interesting call. So thank you, Teja. Great question. Should get a little bit of discussion going with a lot of people as far as what they're dealing with and how we're going to manage these things. So again, thank you. Everybody have an outstanding Tuesday, and I will see you tomorrow.
My question is regarding the scoliosis representation. I was just reading a lot about it, and I wanted to ask you, what is the main factor that puts someone more like prone to developing that exaggerated curves? Because we all have it, but some have it, like you can see it with the naked eye. And I was just wondering, what's the factor that makes them more prone to getting those curves?
Okay. Here's my thought process. This is my opinion, is that it is produced by the forces that are internal. Okay. So the way that everything is attached on the inside is going to influence the movement and the forces involved internally. And then what we see externally is the response to that. Okay. Now, having said that, there's actually research that is starting to ask that question. And so they're looking at the attachment orientations that are associated with people with scoliosis. So there is some, you can actually find it if you start digging into, if you start digging into some of the research on that. So it is there. It's not extensive yet, but they're definitely looking at it. But that would be my opinion.
Say that those people are more lucky to get this like changes that are more exaggerated than others, or like it's genetics or no?
Well, I mean, I would assume that its foundation is genetic to some degree. I don't know if it's like an epigenetic influence or if it's I don't know where that falls. That's not my, it's not my desire to find out that deep of a source. I'm looking more at the mechanical element of it. So I don't have that answer. I don't know that they have that answer either. I don't know if there's been like a gene or whatever, that's been identified that would produce that. But from a mechanical perspective, it makes a lot more sense to me that this is a response to something. And then you say, well, what could that something be? Well, it could be something that's external. There could be an external influence, like some sort of force. Okay, so we've got gravity to deal with, and then, but your internal forces are in response. There's a cutie. There's an internal response to gravity as well. That's how those forces behave relative to gravity. So again, I look at this from the mechanical perspective versus something else.
And I was just thinking, because the scoliotic patients that I get to work with are all narrow. So I was just thinking maybe they're more biased because they're looking at force production, how to produce the force into the ground. Okay.
Yeah. Generally speaking, on narrows, so the pressure through the axial skeleton is more distributed towards the outside of the axial skeleton. So that might be why we see more of this in the narrows, because their turning capabilities are different, right?
And because this changes and turns in the spine are magnified, I'm just wondering, because the patients I get to work with get to present as hypermobile. So I'm just wondering that everything turns because the spine can't. So it looks, or is the spine turning that allows me that excessive motion?
Well, okay. So with every turn, you're going to get a magnification of the peripheral measure. Okay. So we can use Michael Savage's client as a representation, or some of the other stuff that we've been talking about. So this is why you have to appreciate that the spine is moving through ERs and IRs. So when you think about where the turns are in a patient that's diagnosed with scoliosis, they're going to magnify some of the peripheral measures. So that's why they get branded as hypermobile, right? So if I have a turn, if I have an IR turn, let's just say that the lumbar spine is rotated to the right, relative to whatever the front would be. So if we used a line through the sacrum and the pubis as a midline, and then the spine is rotated to the right, can you see how that might magnify the left hip IR measure?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because the spine is turned that way, that the IR on the right would not be as magnified because this, okay.
Absolutely right. You see it? So again, it's like branding these people hypermobile probably isn't helpful, right? You can appreciate the fact that the measures are magnified, but the reason why, like whatever hypermobility means, it just means that the direct measure, again, this is a structural reductionist kind of a viewpoint. It's like, oh, hypermobile, that means that the joint's moving too far. Is it really that the joint's moving too far, or is it the combined representation of the spine, the pelvis orientation, and the hip joint is what's producing the ER? You see it? Yeah. So again, you have to appreciate that. Good morning. Happy Monday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and it is perfect. All right. Had a pretty solid weekend. Very exciting. Got the new, the intensive 19 notebooks came in over the weekend. So there you go. That's probably the first time that we've put the real intensive logo on anything. So that's kind of fun. Got to dig straight into today's Q&A, getting kind of busy this morning. So this is with Dante. And Dante's question pertained to understanding a little bit more about helical structure. And so we've talked about this helical structure quite a bit. In fact, I got a slide from the intensive one that's right there, and you may have actually heard that quote repeated by a couple of the people that were actually in the room at the intensive one. So we've always talked about this helical structure, and we can look at this from the micro to the macro. Your DNA is helically oriented. The things that you're constructed out of, you're helically oriented. Your total physical structure is a helical orientation. This is one of the reasons why I constructed the wide and the narrow ISA archetypes, is because of their helical structures being different, they will move differently. And so if we can understand their point A's a little bit more effectively, sort of like where they came from, and we can look at their point B's as to where they are, we can certainly deconstruct this process and allow them to restore relative motions as needed, or raise their performance based on what their physical capabilities are, because these will be idiosyncratic based on physical structures, which is why we have people that are great swimmers and we have some people that are great pole vaulters or whatever they might be, because it all comes down to the physical structure. So thank you, Dante, for leading us in this direction. A very useful question. Everybody have an outstanding Monday, and I will see you tomorrow.
It's about the helical angle, because I watched some rotations video of you on the YouTube channel, and sometimes you will mention the helical angle. But
yes,
when I searching the helical angle as keywords on the channel, there is not a lot. There is not a video just focus on the helical angle. So do you have any videos just explain what is helical angle and how it will affect the movement of
do you know what a helix is? It's a spiral.
Yeah.
It's a spiral. That's how you're constructed. So everything that you're made of is a helix. So your DNA is helical. Your collagen fibers are helical. Your musculature is organized in helices. Your skeletal structure is organized in helices, right? So everything that you do moves on a helix. So every joint in your body moves on a helical angle. Okay, so there's not straight hinges like it's proposed in some of the literature. There's always a twist and a turn that's associated with that. Okay, and so your gross structure, so the big structure of you, is actually kind of easy to see when you look at a skeleton, and each segment of you moves in a helical manner, and there's a resultant. It's like if you take all of the helices and we put them together, it slowly, as you move farther and farther into a motion, all of these helices start to superimpose and then superpose, just like we were talking about with Zach, right? So there's a twist and a turn, and so you have a certain ability to twist. Okay, and if we looked at somebody with a different physical structure, so you're a wide ISA guy, right? Okay, so I think Ian, you're a narrow, right? Ian's a narrow. Yeah. So if we were to watch you guys, you both turn, because you're both human beings and have the same relative body parts, I would assume, you would look similar, but there would be a subtle difference in the angle at which your body would turn most efficiently. One second. Love you. And that would be when you're turning on the helix. But the thing you have to understand is, like, there's not like a singular helical angle. Okay, we use like an ISA as a proxy measure. Okay, so as a gross measure for your general structure that guides us in how you would turn. So the ISA provides us a measure, so to speak, of how well you would turn, or at what angle you would turn. Okay. So does that get me in the ballpark as to what your question might be?
Yeah.
And so everybody has their own, right? Their own representation of their helical orientation. And then that's where you best move. You always move best on your helical angle. Okay.
So does that mean we when we do all the joint movement, there is a specific angle is best for the movement? Maybe because I remember.
Well, okay, hang on 1 second. Hang on. That is a correct statement. But what we want is, in an ideal world, is the ability to manipulate and change the angle of our helix to allow us to achieve coordinated motions. Okay. So for instance, if you were to reach straight up overhead, okay, straight up, there's no helix there. Like, that's not straight up, my friend, but it was a good effort. Okay, so there's no helix up there. So what that means is, for you to occupy that space, you have to be able to change your helical angle to get there. And so that's what we're measuring on people. We're just measuring their ability to change shape, right, to access spaces. You will always move best on your helical angle. If you can't move your helical angle, then your movement's restricted. Real simple. Okay.
Understand? Yeah.
Does that help you?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Good morning. Happy Wednesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and it is perfect. All right. Today is Wednesday. That means that tomorrow's Thursday. That means tomorrow 6 a.m. Coffee and Coaches Conference call. As usual, grab a cup of coffee. Please join us for some great people, great Q&A, always fun. We've been doing these for a while. We're going to keep doing them until they're no longer fun. So once again, please join us at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Link will be up on the professional Facebook page just prior to the call. That's Eastern time, by the way, 6 a.m. Eastern time. Digging into today's Q&A, this is with Dante. Love Dante's questions. Dante loves to talk about the foundational concepts, and so do I. And so this question really hit home. So he's making reference to a video that's up on the YouTube channel. If you're not on the YouTube channel, please go subscribe so you can get all the videos. But he was using one, we were talking about agility and the behavior of the pelvic outlet. And what this allowed us to do is we got to talk about concentric versus eccentric orientation, connective tissue behaviors, foundational principles, like we will always move in the direction of expansion and such. And so again, really, really strong foundational question. So for those of you that are new to my model, it's a great video for you to even get started with, but like I said, it's going to lead you to some of the stuff on the YouTube channel. So please take advantage of that. Thank you so much, Dante. Truly appreciate the question. Everybody have an outstanding Wednesday. I will see you tomorrow morning, Thursday morning, 6 a.m. Coffee and Coaches Conference call.
We're going back to Dante. Is he still there? You are.
Yeah. I also watched a video about your explain the concentric, eccentric, yield and overcome. But it's 2 years ago. The video is 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's
and
old.
you said, yeah, it's old. And you said the yield and overcome is also the muscle behaviors. But now,
well,
recently,
it's associated with muscle behavior. It's not the muscle behavior.
Okay. So now it's connective tissue behaviors, not muscle behaviors.
It's not muscle behavior.
Yeah. Okay. So
you have concentric yielding. Concentric is the muscle behavior. Yield is the connective tissue behavior associated with it.
But in the old videos, you said the concentric is it's orientation, right?
Muscle
so concentric, yeah.
Muscle
the concentric means shorter than the middle range, if there is a middle range, and the eccentric is longer than the middle range.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So that is the orientation of the muscle.
That's the orientation of the muscle. Correct.
So, but you said in that video, you said the yield is means like that.
Say again.
Yield. So yielding is means like that. If it's just like this is a dumbbell and you go down, you cannot overcome the weight. So that is a yield, right? Yielding behaviors.
You've got two things happening at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the muscle can change, and then you can also have the yield in the connective tissue behaviors at the same time.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
So the concentric orientation, that's the concentric orientation means the muscle will getting shorter,
Yes.
no matter what length
Wait,
either.
okay, hang on. Shorter by the traditional representation of a muscle getting shorter. Okay. Yes.
What do you mean about
If we use the
this?
biceps as the example,
Yeah.
that's the shortened representation. Yeah.
That's actually the orientation. So no matter the length of the muscle, even if it is longer than the middle range, it still can be concentric orientation.
Relative to, so if the
Mhm.
joint changes, so there's one position, there's two.
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Yeah. Shorter.
Yeah. So you have to look at a
Yeah.
relative position to where, like, it's a comparator, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to look at it as a representation of its comparison to what? So concentric orientation relative to what? It's like
Okay.
that like biceps, this is more eccentrically oriented than that. This is more
yeah.
concentrically oriented than that.
Okay, I understand. Yeah,
Okay.
I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Because the
and
middle,
also,
hang on. The middle representation changes from moment to moment. Like where the middle is not one place.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because
And
we're thinking a
these,
comparison between the two.
and these also associated with another video, also an old one. It's move into and out of a cut. Do you still remember that?
Into and out of a cut.
Yeah, the biomechanic. Can I share my screen?
Am I in the purple room?
I'm not sure. Are you in the purple room? Can I share my video? Sorry, can I share my screen?
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah.
Still
That's the
remember?
purple room, dude. See the walls?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So my question is about the middle, in the middle. So you have a 4/4 of the pelvis floor, and left front and the right front, left back and right back. And you said when you come to so at the first, when you raise the leg, you want to go to in the cut before the foot connect with the ground.
Yes.
The right
You're
front.
moving in that direction. Yep. You're moving in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no load on the leg yet.
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah.
So the expansion has to occur in the direction that you're going to place the foot.
Yes, I understand. So it's eccentric yield on the right front, and concentric overcome on the back of the right.
There you go.
And I can also understand when you touch the ground,
Yep.
it's eccentric overcome of the right front because the gut should start to move back, right? So it should be the overcome on the right front, but it's still eccentric. And then when you go to the max P, it's a concentric overcome on the right front.
Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
So that is the question, because when you say when you come back or come out of the ground, when you're here lift the ground, it's back to eccentric overcome on the right front. I don't understand this. In my opinion, why not concentric ear on the right front?
On the anterior outlet?
Yeah, on the right.
Okay. All right. So if it's concentric in the anterior outlet, what is the representation? What is the representation of the pelvis? Is it IR or ER? IR or ER?
IR.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm moving away from that leg, so I'm coming out of the cut, I need to move more towards the ER representation because the IR is reducing. So the maximum amount of IR that was already produced into the ground is starting to dissipate. So as I move away from that, I'm moving more towards the ER orientation, which means that the outlet needs to change back to an eccentric orientation. Otherwise, I can't access ER to come out of the cut because that would be the late ER representation, right?
Yeah.
So ER is increasing, IR is decreasing. If I had a concentric anterior outlet the whole time, I would be stopping.
Okay. So at that moment, the connective tissue behaviors and muscle behaviors change the same time, right?
Yes.
It's concentric to eccentric and overcome oh no, sorry, it's still overcome. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So yeah, because again, you're looking at energy storage and energy release, and then you're also looking at the position of the outlet that allows you to achieve. Like for me to get my leg into the ER representation, the pelvis has to change its shape, which means that I'll have an outlet change. It's a lower force producing position, but it started from a very high force producing position. And then as I move farther and farther away from it, my velocity is increasing. If velocity is increasing, I can't push as hard into the ground anymore. So it's no longer concentric orientation. It's going to be it's going to transition back to the eccentric orientation.
Okay, I understand. So that makes sense. The velocity and the time, that makes sense.
So you have to look at you have to look at where is the force produced, the highest force production. That's going to be an IR representation without fail if you have access to the positions. If you're looking at velocity, I cannot produce high forces if I am using a high velocity strategy. So I have to move in the opposite direction. So that's where ER. That's where you would be in more of an ER representation to demonstrate the velocity.
Oh yeah.
So they're not the same. They're not the same.
Okay. So that is yeah. It's really helped you. I also watched a video. You explain the time limit about the force. You said the power outcome, the power lifter, they don't need to have the really good power outcome because they don't have time limit on each lift. So you explain the velocity and time limit stuff. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
And does the move into and move inside and out of the cut is same with gait, same with walking.
Absolutely the same.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah. Early, middle, max, late. Always.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Man, that's an old video. I looked good back then.
I watch your videos every day.
Oh, you really need to get out more. You should probably do something else with your time, and it's more valuable.
No, I think that is the most valuable thing what I can do now.
Well, I appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say. Good morning. Happy Thursday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand, and it is perfect. All right, Zach, since you're walking to the soccer field and you're not homeless.
If I was homeless, would I not be allowed to ask my question?
Oh no, absolutely no. No, absolutely. I'm open to everybody. So go ahead.
So I have a two-parter for a girl I saw last week. I think both are fairly brief, but the quick history: she's like a year and a few months out from an ACL. I just saw her for the first time, so she did her rehab at a different school, transferred here this year. Got cleared to play softball last spring. It's a right-sided ACL, but the entire rehab, she just had what she described as this like deep central knee pain, like kind of like deep inside the joint. She was able to pass all her return to sport testing, but just felt like crap. So she went back to see the doctor after the season, re-imaged it. The MRI just showed like a bunch of scar tissue. The X-ray kind of showed the screw protruding through the joint line like a tiny bit. So then they ultimately went back in, took the scar tissue out, but when the doc got in there, decided not to touch the screw. So that's still there. I'm seeing her for the first time a month after that procedure. So the first part of the question is, so like testing her range of motion, just like early knee flexion, she'll get like tightness across the front, and then she gets like that same deep knee pain posterolateral, like tightness pinching. So I did like I started with the late tibial IR move, and that didn't do anything, but then I was like, all right, wait, that didn't make sense. I did early, and that took away all of that discomfort, in combination with just like some slight patellar moves. So my first question is the decision making for the early versus late tibial IR literally as simple as whether like they have the symptoms or the restriction in supine versus prone when measured?
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, because you got two different knee positions. They're not the same.
Yep. I just want to make sure that that was as simple as which one do you pick?
Well, okay. So one's tibiofemoral ER, one's tibiofemoral IR. You understand that, right?
One's tibiofemoral. So the early one, which is the one that helped her, is the tibiofemoral IR.
Bingo.
And
so she was in proximal. She had the proximal tibia was ER'd relative to the femur, which is, and that's one of the most common reasons why you get the posterior lateral knee pain with the compressed knee bend, right?
Yep.
It's real common. This is also probably one of the reasons why you would get like a posterior horn injury with a deep knee flexion injury, like a skiing injury or a deep squat or something like that. Because you've got a fluid compartment there that is incompressible. That's what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Take that same fluid compartment, right, and then compress the posterior lateral knee with a deep knee bend. There's your posterior horn injury, right?
Can you just go over really quick, because I guess I can spit back out that the prone knee flexion is like a tibiofemoral ER, but that's one of those, like, I know you said it, but I don't really see it.
You ever do a biceps curl?
Yes.
In supination?
Yes.
That's what prone knee flexion is.
Okay.
That's right. So hang on. One is like that, and one is like that. They're not the same.
All right.
Yeah. How about that?
That's helpful.
Peter didn't smile though, so I'm a little upset that was not a light bulb moment for him. Clearly, he is well ahead of the game.
Still waking up.
No, that's why they're not the same. That's why you can't use them as the same measure, because they don't measure the same thing, right? Yeah.
So then, what finding would you be using the late tibial IR mobilization?
When they so if they're in screw home.
Yep.
Right. So if you get the tibia to IR, and you can get heel to butt, right? Knee bend, all right. They still have to be able to capture max P straight into the ground, right?
Okay.
That's a late IR move.
All right.
That's the difference. One is early, one is late. It's like, so where does late show up? Well, late IR is straight into the ground. So if I can't produce force straight into the ground, then you got to do the late mode.
I think that leads into the second part of the question. So
I knew that. That's why I went for it.
Yeah, we talked before this. So still in the first visit, basically did all that stuff, stood her up. Like before I did all that, actually, like the squatting still reproduced that same central knee pain. Afterwards, the pain was gone. Second visit with her, like a little bit more inconsistent in that, like some of the reps would feel good, some of the reps would feel bad, depending on whether we're doing like a squat, split squat. So like in my head, I'm not capturing that position on every single rep.
Correct.
Is from a sequencing of events standpoint, would there be like a right versus wrong, like on one end, and hip measures, she's like all orientation, like 5'10" IR, like 50 ER. Sequencing of events, like one end of the spectrum, I'm picturing exercises with like traditionally like extended knee, like kind of like right underneath the center of mass, like get more of like a hip bias. Other end, I'm picturing like split squat type activities where I'm moving her through, like in a have more knee excursion. Is there a right versus wrong there, or is it more of like a do it and see?
Well, based on the circumstances that you're describing, I would think you would want to put her in an early representation to start, which would be a split stance or a stagger or something like that.
Okay.
Question.
Hopefully answer.
Hopefully
answer.
So this is a right leg, and she's got no IR on the left side.
Yeah,
or the right side, on the right side, she's got no IR.
On either side, she's got nothing.
Okay. Is she over the right side? Is she pushing down on the right side?
Yeah, she's a wide, so she's like just way over there.
Okay. All right. Take a look at the orientation in standing and see if you don't need to capture a late ER representation at the hip and then go back. I'm talking about like a focal ER representation at the hip.
Focal.
Okay.
Before doing.
You may need to make a change in the shape of the femur before you go after early representation.
Can you talk me through that one really quick?
Like if her center of gravity is way over the right leg,
yep,
then she's going to be pushing down the whole time, which means that she's compressing straight into the ground, right? But she's losing the battle. Gravity's winning. It's compressing her into the ground. She's not pushing away, right? So you captured the early representation of her IR. That alleviates the symptom. But if she can't push away from the ground, so she can't go from the late IR representation that we just talked about all the way into a late ER representation, okay? Then she's not pushing away from the ground. She's still compressing into the ground. So she's losing the battle to gravity on the right side.
Gotcha.
Right. So she has to be able to re-ER after you capture the IR representation.
Gotcha. So that would be a next step, like the initial question about which IRs to go after. That's still the first.
So
and then
Zach, here you go. I'm going to make it crazy simple. She's going into the cut. End of story. She's not turning it around, not coming out of the cut, right? If she's over top of the right leg.
Gotcha.
You see it?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Awesome.
Then I think you're golden. I think you're golden because you should have everything that you need. And then I would say like go early, middle, just go early, middle, late.
Good morning. Happy Friday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right, man, we got a crazy busy Friday coming up. We got to dig straight into today's Q&A. This is with Dante. So Dante presents a very interesting situation here. He's working virtually, which because of the way the world has become, it became very, very popular very, very quickly for people to sort of have their businesses survive and to also serve their clientele. And virtual is tough. It's a very difficult situation because you don't have that immediate response. Measuring, assessing, things like that are always difficult under this circumstance. The more important thing about this clip, though, is it led to some language and a representation that is misleading. That we have to be really, really careful of, because if we have a misrepresentation of what we think that we see in these situations, then our interventions fall way short. So in this case, we were talking about rounded shoulders, which is a pet peeve of mine. It's a misnomer. It's absolutely wrong. if we call things certain things, it becomes distracting. So if I say that somebody has rounded shoulders, then you think that that this is a shoulder problem, and therefore I need to do an intervention that involves that. And again, it's incorrect. It's actually one of the compressive strategies that we talk about very frequently, which we explained in the video. And therefore, now if we have that understanding, we can select a better intervention and have much better outcomes. So again, I challenge you to have a much more evolved representation, a better model versus the one that's based on traditional representations like dead guy anatomy, which again, sometimes useful, but definitely falls short in many instances. So thank you, Dante, for leading us in this direction. You're gonna help a lot of people with this one. Everybody have an outstanding Friday. Podcast will be up on Sunday. I will see you next week.
Several weeks ago, I just asked you one of my client. Actually, she's my friend, and she's not in the same city with me, so I can only teach her online. And that in that time, you told me you never trust other one's measurement, right? So you only trust your hand, and you can just figure out she is really anterior and posterior compression. So today my question is, how can I just figure out if someone was anterior and posterior compression on the thorax? So what can I get from the shape? And,
I mean, other than a visual?
Yeah, I mean the visual. And is there any difference between the wide and the narrow?
Well, there's a difference between the wide and the narrow in regards to the sequence of events as to how they like. So if you have all compensatory strategies, that are superimposed on the axial skeleton, the end representations will be very similar because they're going to lose all of their peripheral ranges of motion. So all of their ERs and IRs will be in deficit, right?
Yeah.
So that's an easy one.
So it's does that mean a man just look, or a women just look like really round shoulder?
Okay,
really
stop right there.
back.
Stop right there. Stop right there.
Yeah.
Stop right there. Okay. Let's all raise your right hand. I promise to never ever refer to anyone as rounded shouldered ever again.
Yeah.
Well, nobody said it. Okay. So we got to stop calling it rounded shoulder because it makes you look in the wrong place. Okay. It's not rounded shoulders. So take your sternum. Okay.
Yeah.
I want you to push it back as far as you can.
Yeah.
It's not rounded shoulders.
I know.
That's the compressed representation of the sternum.
So that just
we call it rounded shoulders, and everybody thinks that the shoulder thingy is the fix, right? Because it's a shoulder problem. If you call it winging scapulae, you blame the scapulae for the winging, and then that's not the problem. See, that's why these situations are perpetuated, right? Because they called them something and they misnamed them, right? So when you see what looks like the so-called rounded shoulders, you know you've got an anteriorly compressed sternum. Yeah. Right. So again, that visual representation when you're doing something virtually is very helpful. Because at least you know that a narrow ISA is going to do that first.
Do the sternal back first.
Yes, sir.
And the wide ISA will be the
wide ISA
thorax forward.
The wide ISA is going to get pushed from behind first. So a narrow ISA gets pushed backward. Their sternum gets compressed first. The dorsal rostral gets compressed first on the wide. So again, the sequencing of events is a little bit different, but their end positions will be the same because they have all of the compressive strategies layered on. Okay.
So if they are going into an end game, the sternum was pressed down, and the thorax will push forward, and it looks really straight on the thorax.
Very flat. It's very flat.
And just the shoulder just like go forward and the winging.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And so that is a version of the end game of the AP compression, right?
That is correct.
And